years of strength, will, and desire, building a future for me and you. Let's get inspired and shine the spotlight on the CUSW. Hello, and welcome to the CUSW Spotlight Podcast, brought to you by the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers, established in 1999. CUSW has been empowering its members and shaping the future of skilled trades for over 25 years. In this podcast, we shine a spotlight on the people, stories, and values that make CUSW a strong and dynamic community. It's an exciting time to be part of this union, and we're here to celebrate the journey, achievements, and dedication of skilled workers. So turn up the volume and let's get started. Here's your host for the CUSW Spotlight Podcast, Mr. Dan Plexman.
Welcome to the CUSW Spotlight Podcast. Today, the CUSW has thousands of workers across Canada. Contributing to this recent and future growth of the CUSW is Tom MacLean, the CUSW Business Development and Strategy Lead. Tom is actually one of the founding members of the CUSW, and he has a lot of light to shed on how the CUSW came to be. I really look forward to having a discussion with Tom and hearing about how a group of workers decided they needed change and they needed to break free of control and develop a democratic union. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm very good. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? I gave the audience a little information about who you are, but you have lots to say. I know you do.
Yeah, I guess like a lot of people early on, I got pulled out of high school to work in plants, and then I wanted electrical apprenticeship, so I went back to high school, worked afternoon shift, and went to school in the morning and got my courses. And then I was fortunate in 1982 to start apprenticeship with Ontario Hydro. I mean, they did the hiring in those days. The union didn't control any of the hiring of apprentices. So there I started at Bruce in 1982, went to Darlington in 84, finished my time, jumped out on contractors, worked at a Barrie local, and then went back into lines and stations and basically worked there pretty much every transformer station between Toronto and Windsor. And then from there, I actually ended up working also out of the Windsor local. Then I was chief steward, lines and stations, chief steward at Lambton, chief steward at Bruce, a couple times, a business agent for IBW 1788, president for IBW vice president, and whatever duties were assigned kind of thing. You know, down in the U.S. at Progress meetings, attended the IBW picnic in St. Louis. That's why well-rounded knowledge of how the industry worked, and I worked with a lot of great people. But yeah, so I kind of been through all the ropes, as well as being on the executive board as vice president when we made the move.
Kind of like a jack of all trades within the union movement.
They kind of throw you in the deep end, and if you can swim, then they just throw you in the deeper end. So, yeah. But I mean, no, I worked with a lot of great people that answer a lot of questions, both outside of our local union within the industry. And
I think you were just describing the term voluntold, but yeah.
Well, you put your tools in your trunk and your bag and go try to get enough weeks. You know, there's periods of time there where you had to work enough to get pokey weeks. That was how to make ends meet. So things weren't always the greatest as they've been for the last number of years.
I'm probably about 10 years younger than you, I think. And I remember those days as a younger guy in the 90s, just trying to get those weeks for your unemployment check.
Yeah. So, they're just starting the front end of a benefit plan, the union and pension. First dollar into the RSP was a little bit later, kind of setting where we were in a box and, kind of what I came into. Like when you look at the past, previously in 1974, they had to go into long strike to get the hiring hall because it was gate hire before that. So if they didn't like you, you didn't get hired, or you had a reputation, you didn't get hired the next job, right? And then there'd also been the big Loomis project, which was the heavy water plants at Bruce. And Loomis was a large American contractor putting them up. And something went wrong. My mom worked there and then went to Ontario Hydro Construction after that. But for whatever reason, it was a large contractor manned by the local in the area. And then when I went to Ontario Hydro, 78 was chartered for the property of Ontario Hydro. And so the Kitchener guys went home and the 88 guys came in with Ontario Hydro and carried on the work. So, and there was still the hangover of that. And that could cause a lot of upset, of course, when people lose jobs and other people gain jobs.
So if I'm understanding, you basically had one local with one company.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
That's collective agreements.
That's a dynamic that's kind of unheard of in most situations.
It was created, to be fair, by Ontario Hydro and the IBW way back in the day, and some CUPE locals, because they were having a hard time manning the jobs in the north, and the hydroelectric projects remote, and then the coal plants, and a lot of people didn't like working the coal plants. So it wasn't really necessarily any problems until the nukes come along, because they were big and large and heavily weighted on the electrical trade, right? Especially when the big plants started going up, it was, and you're in the middle of a local union that doesn't have a lot of work and you guys are maxed out. But it was only for the property and it wasn't for anything else. And the other box we're in, like, we couldn't grow. We weren't allowed to hire people off the street. Years before, a lot of the immigrant workers that come over from Britain and Ireland and Scotland had a hard time getting in the other locals. So because we were new and growing, they end up with us. But in my time, the only way you could get in was an apprentice. So, any journeyman that's with us now, you wouldn't be here if this was 1788. It would be travelers from the other locals manning those jobs. And it would just be the apprentices that were being picked up by the Apprenticeship Council. So you had that, and then we got put into 𝗬𝗏𝗏 against our wills because Ontario Hydro formed us. We had direct bargaining rights, but pushed into the Contractor Association against our will. Everybody did, all trades in that regard. So you had the power workers on the other side. They controlled the maintenance, even though we did all the large outages at that time. And then you had the other unions, the international on the other side. So as long as Ontario Hydro was growing, we were growing, and things go bad with Ontario Hydro, things would go bad with us. But we were about 1,400 members, and we had about 1,000 travelers, kind of all across the province. And it was basically what we call the power sector today. And we were the second biggest local in the province at the time. And we ran a tight ship. It also caused a lot of problems with Ontario Hydro because of, the grievances and our jurisdictional stuff that we protected. We weren't necessarily popular in those days with the company.
For sure. Yeah. A unique development happening, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then, I started in 82, and when you're moving along, and then you start to hear about contract talks coming up, and, oh yeah, what's all that about, right? Not really come from the apprenticeship. Learn the trade, and every so often we bargain, and there could be a strike if we don't get it, but that won't happen. We were on one 10 years ago when the company learned a lesson and that we were serious about this stuff. And at the time, the issue was board allowance. Like, there was 60 guys working at Hydro One, and they're trying to knock their board allowance down to what's Darlington, right? Bruce was kind of left alone as far as I knew. So anyways, I broke down. We went out and strike. I remember being in the picket line the first day. I just bought a car, and it was great driving up. And then 6 weeks later, I couldn't put gas in it. Right, people have picked me up to go man the picket line. And people were getting charged and thrown around. And it was, if you've not been a picket line, it's quite the experience. So we were on a 5-month strike. We broke the low board rate at Hydro One. That went back up, and same with Bruce, but Darlington had to stay. And they wanted us to stay on strike for Darlington, but after 5 months, everybody's hungry and tired and broke, so they didn't support that move. And that's why Darlington was a new build at the time, and that's why it had the low rate. And also figuring we manned by a lot of the Toronto area.
Yeah, kind of hard to make decisions when you're starving.
Especially when you're a second-year apprentice.
Yeah.
Not ready for it. But like I said, we were probably our strongest point in 82 was because you're kind of one side or the other. And people knew from the people across picket line 74 how that worked out for them and their relationships after the fact. And as a matter of fact, the first thing that ever happened to me from the organizational point of view was the fact that we were on strike, and sister local across the picket line at Pickering, we were on strike.
No way.
Yeah. So that caused...
That's unheard of.
So, yeah, I don't know that it's ever happened before. And I know once Chief Steward got back, I think it was within about 6 months after the strike, the bunch of that stuff got cleaned up. But a lot of people wouldn't in that organization. And it was a contractor that it could be argued a lot of different ways, the reasons why, but at the end of the day, that's what happened. Even the building trades, they were out for a while, and IBW's out for a 6-week ICI strike too during that time. And the 𝗨𝗶𝗹𝗶𝗀𝗲, he hung out for the durations.
The line has to be drawn in the sand, and sometimes someone's going to cross it, right?
And so after that, that's when I went to Darlington at the build there and finished my time. But there was just coming out of the ground, and there was 15 apprentices maybe, and 150 journeymen. Basically, Unit 0 was going, and then I met a chief steward by the name of John 𝗬🗏, who later became the business manager of the organization, and no different than Bruce, solid representation. Any issues, whether you're a traveler or local, got dealt with. Lots of times with a grievance committee that was carrying 60 grievances across the board, trying to resolve them. And we've had more than that in the past too. So we spent a lot of time there at the board and fixing things. So yeah, very progressive, very aggressive.
Sometimes I guess with this aggression or whatever you want to call it, going back and forth, you guys just kind of felt you needed to take control. Had no choice.
Yeah, well, there's a ton of things that were happening at the time. And I mean, some have tried to paint it many different ways on why we went, or one person decided to leave, or this, that, the other. But there was a combination of a whole bunch of things. So, all the internationals, all trades, signed general presence maintenance agreement. And the GPC reduced rates up to 90% and time and a half. And I think it was a 40-hour work week, and the rest of us were working either 36 or 38. And, they had to wear different hard hats and tag 90%ers were there. And a bunch of people had to go over there, whether they liked it or not. And the idea of the GPC is to do maintenance work and undermines the in-house union or competes with the in-house union. Right. In that regard. So then all of a sudden now you have, once that's there, and the power workers see that it's going to affect their work, then that's when things started to build. And the power workers started doing construction projects and against all the trades. So, we're trying to figure it out. We're in a contract association, and in order to file a JD, and you need to be with the same employer. So we're trying to figure it out after a round of bargaining, and our lawyer had said, well, just certify them. And said, well, yeah, okay. So we sat on that for 2 years. Only a handful of us that were aware of that. And then
nothing moves fast, eh?
Yeah. The power workers were doing more and more. And then we were at the bargaining table, and we filed certification across the province, signing basically 2,000 cards in a little over a day. And the call came into the bargaining room,
and that was back in the day when people were actually signing with pens and paper too.
Correct. Oh yeah, no, I had no idea what was going on. And I remember the LR guy and bracket on this bracket in the hallway, and of course bargaining was suspended. And also part of that too was the fact that when we certified, we did all the contractors in there too, which belonged to the other locals. In generation, in the line station side, we had the contractors that were from the locals for that type of work. In that. So when we filed those certifications, that upset our sister locals, and we had a couple of friends, I would say. There's always a problem because we always operated differently. We ran elections, stewards, and stuff that wasn't in the Constitution, but what we felt was the proper way. Stewards should work for the people. So if they're elected by the people, they work rather than work for the person that appointed them, right? In that regard. So it made it a little more cleaner, and then also the person the members thought would be the best person for it. So we're always kind of more of a social type organization within a business union structure.
Yeah, a little more democratic as well.
Yeah, and we tried flatlining things. And
actually,
so we gave up. Yeah,
it's noticeable our way our structure is.
The bottom up.
Yeah, bottom up.
Yeah. So then we give the contractors back to the locals, which may have been a mistake when I look back at it, but I'm not sure how that might all played out. And it didn't matter. The damage was done and our cert was successful. And then we started filing jurisdictional disputes over the work. Construction work being construction industry work, which is a definition under the Labor Relations Act. And there's no definition of maintenance. Actually, repair is in that definition. So starting to file JDs at the board, and we're winning millions of dollars of damages and on the definition. And the labor board said time out. And we tried before we filed too, I should say, we met 3 times with, that was when Jack McDonald was president of Power Workers and the VPs. The 3rd time they had basically said, no, we're not interested, and showed us the door. And then we filed 3 JDs the next day. And there's pictures of 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗹𝗶𝗲𝗲 was the guy that was the sharp end of the spear around that. And there's pictures of him with the 300 JDs. I mean, that's how many we filed protecting. Like I said, we kept winning. And then finally the Ontario Labour Relations Board said, wait a minute, the Ontario Hydro Labour Relations Board, we're going to give you a vice chair industry. Go figure it out yourselves. So that started what's the Chestnut Park Court and the In Park Court. But there was another thing going on at the time too, which was Canadian building trades movement. And all the trades were involved. It was more around Toronto local unions, but the NDP government was in, and there was a move on Bill 80 to Bill 40 had already been brought in, helping unions organize better. And then Bill 80 was supposed to protect local unions from trusteeship supervision and members from their unions being onerous or hard on them. They're expelling them, without good process, due process and that. So I was hired or brought on as lobbyist at that time to work the parties over Bill 80. And it was a good thing. And, we were all in because the writing was on the wall for Ontario Hydro, and we had to be able to continue. So,
the future was kind of in sight. You could see the writing on the wall, as you say.
I was a backbencher in that group, but I got to see it. And then when the internationals, they were get Bill 80 to, change some of the onus and make things more difficult. And they're also lost some of the stroke in it. Then a lot of those people got, bought out or wiped out, and they kind of just
shifted
fizzled from there.
Yeah.
But we also had Ontario Hydro was going to privatize. So we were on the property. We wanted to follow our jobs. Members wanted to follow their jobs, and the IBW said, no, it's going to go to contractors. That belongs to the local union in the area. And no, your people will get split amongst the locals, and you're not going to be able to follow your jobs. You'll go bottom of the work list. So,
and you're already there. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so we went in mediation at the labor board, and it was, either take 636 and all the contractors, make it a superpower sector local, and we'll take on everything there and organize it and run it. That didn't fly. They said, no, you get split. And of course, then the members didn't want that. And then we had our 40th anniversary. So the members we had different units all around the province. They had to prove it. So they approved $10,000, which was a fair bit of money in those days. For a 40th anniversary boat cruise in Toronto Harbor, and then it was subsidized so members could come. And then there was at the Royal York, we had a room afterwards where everybody could come after the cruise and celebrate some libations and all that. Yeah, so it was got approved, and then we had a letter from Washington saying, "Sorry, you didn't get our approval to spend that money." And it's like, well, it's our members' money. The members approved it through all proper processes. We're going to have a party and.
Yeah. Where did the money come from? It came from them. Geez.
So we had to write Washington to get approval. Of course, they approved it after we did that. And then we had to invite them, and 2 couples showed up, and they weren't international. So, but anyways, we had our party, but that's when you realize you don't even have control necessarily over your own funds.
Yeah. That's the real eye opener. You can't even control and run your own anniversary party, your 40th anniversary party.
So when you go down to, we went to Progress meeting in Washington, and that was interesting. The president at the time there, he was up speaking at the front and with the papers, and they threw him in the air, and he comes down the audience with his, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to the people, and, and we're going to talk about portability, which at the time, I don't know if it is anymore, but at the time it was big because local unions didn't want other contractors from the city coming in there local with all those guys, and they didn't get the jobs, right? Normally you'd lay off and hire by the geographical area. And nobody's speaking, right? And then he goes, oh, don't worry, I left my 357 back up there at the podium, so anybody can speak how they want. And so the guys in front of us, I think they're from New York local, if I remember right. And so in New York, we use _𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 right? Like it's and so you get to see some of this. Like these guys are scared. Like
it sounds like the movies. It sounds like a scene from a movie where like that's hardcore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for me, you come from the farm, this and that and the other, not afraid of anything. And I'm watching all these older grown men. I mean, I was a young guy, and one person to get up and speak, and then there's like 8 international reps after him destroying his viewpoint. But that was interesting. It was down. John Sprack and I were down for that, and it was an education. and that. And
yeah, one of life's experiences you'll never forget.
yeah, so we have these things. Basically, we're going over the cliff. We worked, members and like myself, and worked in the other locals. When I started, for instance, I mentioned earlier about the heavy water plant. The first day I started for 3 months, I sat with three A personality guys from Kitchener. So I got to learn lots and have to endure lots over it. But, it's all part of learning and surviving in the construction industry. So that was the dilemma we're in. We had a burning platform, and everywhere around us, we had enemies. So it was pretty tough. We had our rights, and we got this peace agreement. The other thing, I guess, too, I would mention was when they did the general presence maintenance agreement, the power workers filed a grievance, and an arbitrator by the name of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 heard that arbitration. And the power workers won an award that said 200 building trades across all the plants and all trades, 200, not 201, 200 total across the province doing maintenance work, which ended up becoming Appendix A work later on. So now all of a sudden the GPC thing backfired and the power workers had the controls on it. And like I said, we were public enemy number one because we filed the JDs and we were winning as far as the power workers were concerned, right?
Yeah, so you're feeling like everybody's hating you now.
Yeah. So then we could see where the writing was all on the wall, and a lot of members didn't want to go into local unions. So the board sent me back to ask Joe to come back on the board. Joe came back and ran for president. And he was doing labor studies in Mac and actually had a scholarship to Queens for industrial labor relations when we asked to come back. So he forgo that and came back and helped us back on the board. So with all this coming, there was really no choice. So we met with CEP at the time. I think that was Dave Coles, if I remember right. And then, of course, the power workers. So they'd gone from, walking in the room as enemy, coming out saying, yeah, let's do this. So we negotiated construction council, this, and that, and the other. And we brought a motion forward from the board to leave the IBW. We had our deal with the power workers. We were indemnified, so the legals were covered in that. And so we made that move to go get the card signed, shift the organization.
What a shifting of the tides. Holy cow.
Yeah. And then at the same time, they move under the law. They file for supervision trusteeship. And we had done a poison pill plan. So part of it was they put out that we stole $2 million, $1 million in the general fund, roughly $1 million in the building fund, roughly. And you know how that is. You're on the board, you're vice president, you're a small town, and your buddies and members are all here, and they just stole money, right? And this, and that, and the other. And some believe it, some are shocked, some don't.
Being labeled as a thief and a traitor, and
yeah.
Like that's pretty damning. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, but the thing we did there was smart legal. We did a poison pill plan. So they had to bring 60% of the members, which are across Ontario, to a central meeting. And it might have been higher than that, the percentages, but it had to be a clear majority then to give the funds to the international. And then
use the power of the vote.
Yep. And they didn't do it. They couldn't take the money, and they couldn't get that many people in and get that vote once they realized. So then we turned from zeros to heroes while they're protecting our money.
Yeah. And
this, not, and the other. That one big time swung it. The other one was the AIDS letter. So Ken Woods, the International Vice President of Canada, put a letter out saying contractors hiring 17 members is akin to having AIDS. We still have that letter, the AIDS letter, we always called it, right? So that got circulated. That just caused even more shoulders and backs to get up. And
that's got to be the most unpolitically correct thing I've ever heard in my life.
At that time, it was a killer disease, right? There wasn't necessarily a cure for it.
No, exactly.
Whatever, right? But, inflammatory stuff, and it happens in these things, emotionally charged. And, it's
kind of like the backlash from you guys going from having your hands handcuffed to gaining control. And now he's just going to start spewing slag.
And we set it up so that you could choose, you could stay with the organization. At the time, it was going to be construction council or new local later, or what ended up being Canadian CUSW. So that was all going good, and we're having open houses and getting the card signed and everything. And then we're at the board filing, and the board ruled industrial union couldn't organize a construction union. So then we were done in the water. International put their appointees in. And then the only people that really suffered when people talk about how bad it was, well, Judy Mitchell and I were on the out of work list. Joe was in school. And everybody else was working. IBW said, well, these people aren't members to Ontario Hydro. We need to remove them. And Ontario Hydro said, no, we're not removing them. And they didn't go under the act and the Constitution, and that happened. So Judy and I didn't work for 2.5 years, and that's how I ended up going to Chrysler and working there for 6 years. And
wow. Yeah, you guys have even more than just blood, sweat, and tears.
And we tried it when the whole thing, we were trying to fix it. We did the travel and road show around to talk to different locals and their executive boards and business managers, which was pretty much useless. We went down to Windsor, myself and 𝗨𝗶𝗹𝗶𝗲𝗲, and talked there, and we were pulling out our paperwork, the stuff the international had said. We were been approved like 25, 30 years previous, and their business manager showing the board stuff that's like 6 months old, 4 months old, that sort of thing. And then their president calls it out and says, look, they're bringing stuff here from years ago, and you're bringing new stuff. Like, this stuff clearly has been here. It's historical. Your stuff is it new or fabricated, or what is it? And their board actually sided with us, which was to their demise, because they come in after that and turned the board members.
It's every backdoor. I don't know. It almost seems like a scene from the Wild West movie where guys are just gunslinging and doing what they want and not playing by any type of rule or common respect.
Well, maybe a bunch of that's true. I mean, the Constitution gives the power in the right spots. With internationals, it's with the president, period. And the convention, which is largely not controlled by Canadians or Canadian votes, but
I mean more of a personal sense, where these attacks on people and the things you're saying, like, it just seems so unjust to attack somebody for fighting for what they believe in on a business sense and a labor union sense. Like,
yeah, I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, right? It was different times. Things got sorted in the parking lots. It was what people would consider not appropriate now was somewhat deemed to be appropriate.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't think a lot of the younger viewers and the viewers in general, the members of the CUSW, really understand that the hostility, the blood, sweat, and tears, like I said, like, you guys got the skin in the game, and we really appreciate the hard work and everything you guys have sacrificed for us, because that's what it is. It's a sacrifice you guys have put out there.
And we had done research. Like, we also told the members they'd lose their international pensions because those funds go where his dues. And I don't know how it is now in their constitution, but if you went 6 months in arrears or you're kicked out, they take that pension because it's not under Ontario pension laws. And we had that legal advice, and then one of our members went to court on it and got the same ruling, came back. No, it wasn't a lot of money, but when Joe allowed people to go where they went, and they were split, the ones who went to IBW were split where they lived in the local, and now we had about 400 members. So, in 1999 in 𝗬𝗏𝗏, 7 of us funded Joe to go find an option, and 𝗬𝗏𝗏 supported us out of the US on that. And then it was a construction union. They were successful. Now, in the meantime, after a year under the act, elections have to happen. So the appointed international people that were running 1788, the members came forward with a board petition, and they had to run elections, and every one of them got knocked out. So then there was an elected during that 5-year legal battle fight, this, that, the other. People that supported us were there running the organization, having a tippy toe because they had eyes on them all the time. And they endured a lot, right? Because we bargained with Ontario Hydro. It was myself and John Sprack at the end and the other business managers. So they're always trying to undermine or change but the members controlled the vote. So they wanted to get rid of seniority. We wouldn't, right? But when they came in under the trusteeship and they did the first round of bargaining, they got rid of seniority. So still at Hydro 1, but at OPG and Bruce Power, it was gone because they don't believe in that sort of thing. And some other things that were moved out of the agreement pretty quick.
Right.
And a bunch of it's there to this day. But anyways, there was other fallout after we got our ticket. The one that, was kind of disappointing was after CUSW's in place, because Joe had friends. He ran for International Executive Committee at the behest of a couple of American board members looking to change the IBW across the board, but it didn't work out. But he still got a ton of votes. That also caused some upset, but not at all the reason we left. But he met a lot of good people. So Jerry Shanahan, business manager of Cape Breton Local, they were destitute, right? Like guys falling off welfare
the whole East Coast was pretty dry back then, eh?
Yeah, so he come to us saying, all these destitute members, could we help out? We had a lot of jobs, and because we had the power workers now, as we do today, have a joint dispatch with them where we supply their people, our people, to our joint jobs, right? So when people are hiring them and us when it comes to that stuff. So we put out, I don't know, 60, 100 of Cape Bretoners out. It was all good, right? And then Jerry said, you guys really would like to have their pension benefit. Those funds go back and stimulate the run up benefits. So they're out of benefits, right? To get back. And, Joe warned them how that would play out.
Yeah.
And they signed the remittance agreements. And Jerry said, no, I get along well with the international and I'm, we're good in this and that and the other. Well, they come in and they removed them. And about 60 of the guys stayed with us because there was still no work down there. They're all older guys. There's nobody left, I know, from down there that comes to outages anymore, but it was perfectly fit. They come in, do Appendix A outages and go back. And then come, sometimes there's 2 or 3 of those a year or whatever, but it fit being able to live their life and put money in their pockets. And then they just joined our benefit plan and our pension plan, but we end up helping Jerry get a job out west. And then that was the end of that one. So,
Right.
And, to be fair, we did mediate with the IBW a couple times over the years that I was part of with a board vice chair mediator who's still active around the Ontario Hydro or on the old hydrophile. And mutually, I think we both wanted to sort something out, but there was always a third party there that didn't want it sorted out.
Right.
And because there's all sorts of different parties that had interest in law firms that had different interests in that. But we have a peace agreement with them today. I mean, that's all, water under a bridge. We both understand that the electrical trade is commonalities. Electrical trade's important. It's under attack. Hours for apprenticeship is vanishing. People are trying to push this micro-credentialing. It's kind of funny, but it's a race to the bottom. It's all about them lowering wages, not about building competent tradesmen that can do the work that's needed today.
Yeah,
So
exactly. We work together instead of against each other.
Yeah, and we share workers and show the industry that we can work together regardless of. And like I said, if anybody's personal about what happened through all that, me and Judy, and we're long over it. It's just history and some things that went on. And when we look at it today, right, we are working together around the electrical trade and support. We are within the joint dispatch of the PW. We have an agreement with 𝗨𝗶𝗶𝗍 in Quebec for moving people back and forth, as well as working with the IBW. We joined the CCU, which you only can be small and medium-sized Canadian unions. You can't be an international union or a big Canadian union. So the voice of Canadian unions is pure.
Yeah, we really are growing things from the grassroots and keeping it grassroots.
Yep. And we work with all the building trades. We haven't been out raiding, and some of them trade us, but it's not our model. We'll go after the non-union and in that area when it comes to that. So we've kind of found a home there. It's a mix of I guess some called broken toys, but academic type unions and blue collar unions, and it's growing. But we have friends, a lot of Canadian unions. I don't have any Canadian unions that we're not friends with, and as well as the rest that we work with and complete jobs with. So it all works. We're kind of in a spot, love, not love, but we kind of end up in a lot smaller point of view than that Canadian building trades model that I witnessed once as a young guy. And so we've been able to wrap it up, diversify other sectors, one employer, 2 collective agreements. We got over 60 or 70 employers and 100 collective agreements, and different provinces, different sectors, different trades.
Yeah, thinking of like diversification, a lot of people think of CUSW, we're kind of pigeonholed into just the electrical power workers industry, but we're all trades, all facets of every industry across Canada. We're branching out.
The gentleman that works with me in growths is a millwright, and that from the West Coast, and we have other millwright reps too. So I mean, it is what it is. Where we have all employee, where we share the work with other trades or other unions. That's fine. We make it work. So
exactly, and everybody at CUSW, we all really appreciate your contribution to the growth, and especially your contribution to building this union from the grassroots from the very beginning. Everybody at home, we're all really impressed, and I know myself, I never realized it was so intricate on how it came to be.
Yeah, it's a village. It's not me. We were 3 lines deep, and members were solid, and carries through. So I've always said it took a village. to get where we got to. Yeah, there was solid leadership. It's with our team, with Joe and John at different times, and the rest of us doing our parts, and then learning and understanding and whatnot, right? But
yeah, we talk about growth and development, and it's really growing and developing relationships. That's how I see it. Mm-hmm. Like none of this happens without a conversation like we're having here today. Nothing happens without building relationships like we're doing here today. Yep. And that's how the trust begins, and that's how things actually happen and start moving.
Yeah, you respect the past and learn from it, and then just keep moving forward. We got a great model, and we do things, in my view, the right way, and we're principled, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with everybody. You don't even have to like your workmates or the people you're working with, but when you approach everything with respect, it all seems to just fall into place.
Yep. That's it.
Right on, Tom. Now, Tom, honestly, thanks a lot for sharing your story and your personal experience with the CUSW. And like I said earlier, you have got to be applauded for what you've sacrificed, blood, sweat, and tears, and even bleeding yourself financially for our cause and for the benefit of guys like myself and everybody coming up behind us. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because this wasn't done on somebody paying for travel or your wages or anything. This was done over the 5 years. There's nobody funding any of that. It was us meeting in remote spots, or generally in Toronto, in some transformer station, because we all had 𝗧cie keys.
No, honestly, and that's where I see the actual difference in when people say they're dedicated to a cause. It's like, you can say this and you can say that, but once it starts costing you out of pocket and it starts affecting your lifestyle and you paying your own bills, that's when pure dedication and true dedication starts talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, people throw the word trade unionists around pretty loosely, but to me, do you still believe in he's still moving the stuff forward when there's no paycheck?
Yeah.
There, right? So when I look around and at other organizations and whatnot, you wonder where people are, or how dedicated actually are they? Because the union movement was built back then. It was never built on a paycheck or anything. It was built on people that wanted better terms and conditions and dignity in the workplace. And yeah, wages were part of it, but it was a lot more to it than that. And they went through those causes with nobody paying them a nickel, right? So
yeah, I'll think about that next time I'm thinking maybe I'm paying too much union dues. Yeah. All right, Tom. I think we have an awesome show here. Thanks so much for your candid conversation. And if there's anything else you want to share with the viewers, here's your chance now. And if not, for everybody else at home, thanks for sharing this time with us. Thanks for tuning into the CUSW Spotlight. If you have any show ideas, or if you want to be a guest, please refer to the information at the end of the show, and you can find all the information there. Thanks again, Tom. Do you have any parting words?
No, thanks, Dan.
All right. Thanks again. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for shining bright in the CUSW Spotlight. Let's get inspired and shine a spotlight on the CUSW.